when the flash crash was happening in 2020, I think one of the most searched things when you type in like Brandon Vandercock is like, what's his net worth or something like that. There are definitely advantages to not doing YouTube full time. I always say to people, don't listen to the opinions of people that I personally have no idea whether in the long term the Tesla and then switch and get the GameStop and then switch and get the Nvidia. Oh, not many. It would be maximum 5, I think.
All right, hi there, this is Renee, and this is part 2 of my interview with Brandon from the New Money YouTube channel. In this video, we discussed how Brandon himself invests. How does he think about active and passive investing? How many stocks does he have in his portfolio? How he thinks about diversification, his lessons from his buddy Hamish Hodder, and finally, Brandon shared insights into what it was like for him quitting his job and pursuing a full-time YouTube career back in 2019. So without further ado, let me play the video to you. All right, if we shift the focus maybe a little away from AI and on investing in general, I wanted to pick your brain on some very basic investing concepts here. So first of all, I want to ask you, how do you invest personally? Like many things to address here. Maybe we start off by discussing, are you investing only actively, or do you have a mix of active and passive strategies?
Yeah, so I'm actually um I'd say I'm probably about 50-50 to be honest. As an active and a passive investor. I mean, I don't tell people that they should do the same, but I personally have no idea whether in the long term I'm going to be any good at picking companies. I find it interesting and I like doing it. And I like having that control over my portfolio and investing in only the companies I think have big moats and manage well and, going to do well in the future, so on and so forth. But I don't know that. And honestly, the statistics are not great. Like we all know the statistics that even the active funds, they underperform, like the professionals that invest actively underperform the S&P 500. I was talking to Guy Spear last year actually, and I said, congratulations. I was doing an intro. He's one of the investors that has beaten the market over the long term. And Guy, being as humble as he is, he stopped me and he said, yeah, but basically not by much at all. And the amount of effort that I've had to do to get that tiny little outperformance is really, really difficult. So I think for most people, it's they're probably not going to be able to beat the market. So I have to like sit there knowing that, and I have to really think rationally and say, okay, do I know that I'm going to beat the market over the long term? I don't know that. So I think it would be unwise in my eyes. I'm not prescribing this to anyone, but I think it would be unwise for me to I've been investing for 7 or 8 years, not that long in the grand scheme of things. I don't have a 2-decade track record, for example. I think it would be unwise for me to say, oh yeah, I'm the next Warren Buffett. So I always like to have that portion of ETFs in my portfolio that I know, even if I'm the worst investor that the world has ever seen over 40 years, I'm still going to have that nice cushion of ETFs that have just been rising as the market does over time. So I will always have that big solid chunk of ETFs. And then beyond that, then I try and find, as Monish Pabrai or Peter Lynch would say, the multi-bagger investments, the ones where you don't find them very often, but you do your digging and you invest in some, hoping that you get, you know, 30 or 40% success rate, but the 30 or 40% success rate leads to some stocks that go 2, 3, 4, 10x. Because that's I'm sure you're the same. That's quite interesting. That's
Yeah.
quite fun to do. But it's not for everyone, and that's why I never try and prescribe you should do this, you should do that, because if you're not interested, there are plenty of companies that I look at, like I pick up a bank, bank financial statements, JP Morgan or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just don't care at all about this. Or I pick up like what you say, Meta or Google or any of the social medias, or a Tesla or something like that. I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. So I think it's about really taking a long, hard look at yourself and saying, what do I want to do? Do I want to look at individual stocks? Because if the answer is no, and that's okay, then just be a passive investor. But I think for people like myself that have that interest
Yeah,
in looking at individual companies, then there is space for active investing. But I
yeah,
wouldn't leave myself exposed to that
yeah.
100%
I
either.
think you bring up a couple of good points here. What I would add is that obviously one of the benefits of active investing is that you get the opportunity to outperform the market. Of course, this also comes at the risk of
Yep.
underperforming. But I think on top of that, what I find quite rewarding about the art of stock picking is that it's intellectually stimulating. So it
Mm.
forces me to keep up with what's going on in the world, to keep up what is going on at the companies in my portfolio. I just find this a lot of fun. So I guess that's
Yep.
also one non-monetary benefit of active investing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. Um, Again, it's not, yeah, not for everyone, but I'm like you. I find it very interesting to look at what's going on in the world of business. I've always had an interest in
Yeah,
business.
and
So listening
I
to the
guess of a
earnings
hundred
calls
people,
and
how many truly enjoy looking at financial statements? Maybe one,
not many.
right?
Yeah, not
Not
many.
many.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of your interests. And if you're not interested in that, you are better off just investing passively, and you will also have better results. How many
Yeah,
stocks do you
definitely.
own in your active portfolio, so to speak?
Oh, not many. It would be maximum five, I think. It's just so this is another thing that I think quite strongly on. I don't think active investors, just everyday Joes like you and me, I don't think we should hold that many stocks because I'm very much of the Warren Buffett kind of circle of competence, make sure you understand the business. And I think once you're getting any more than that, you're really kind of stretching yourself for how well you really understand each one. So yeah, I don't think it's because I've got that. I don't feel the need to diversify when I'm active investing because I'm so diversified through my passive investing. So I don't feel the need to hold 10 or 20 individual stocks because I've got my S&P 500 kind of index funds churning in the background. Um, but yeah, I don't think people should own that many
Yeah.
stocks. I
Yeah,
think they should just take their time and understand stocks well.
as you bring up the concept of diversification, the way I would think about your personal net worth is that you are highly, highly concentrated anyway. Because if you were to place a value on the new money YouTube channel and everything surrounding your investing persona, so to speak, right? You will have a high level of concentration, I assume.
Yeah, when you look at all things considered, yeah, definitely. You mean like how because I've got so much stake in my YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
If one
definitely.
would place a value on it, it would probably represent the largest position in your portfolio, so to speak.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah. It's yeah, you're exactly right. People tend to ask because I don't really share what's in my portfolio and I don't share like what my net worth is or anything like that. But also it's because like when people ask me, I think one of the most searched things when you type in like Brandon Vanderkolk is like, what's his net worth or something like that. But
Oh,
my net
really?
worth, yeah, something like that. But it's my net worth is entirely dependent on whatever I could sell my business for. It's like the other stuff is just not even close. So who knows? And then ultimately that comes down to what someone might be willing to pay for my business. It's like it's a totally redundant question because I've got no idea and I couldn't even guess because it's
Yeah.
not up to me.
And I
It's up
guess a
to
YouTube channel as a business is hard to sell anyway, at least if it depends on you
exactly.
as a person, right? So the value
Yeah,
lies more in the cash flow it actually produces year in and year out.
exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, and no one's going to buy it if you just step away from it.
Exactly.
If you're just trying to cash out and go away, then it's not worth a dime, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have one more question on the investing side of things here. You are clearly hanging out a lot with Hamish, right? How often do you
Yeah.
produce podcast episodes?
So we do one each week, but
One each
he
week.
lives in Melbourne and I live in Canberra. So for those that don't know, that's about an 8 hour drive apart. So we do them just across Zoom, across the internet. And then whenever he comes to Canberra or whenever it's usually me going to Melbourne. That's when we kind of meet up and we'll try and do a podcast when we're both together.
So what I wanted to ask you is, what would you say is your biggest learning from talking about investing with him over the years?
I've learnt a lot from Hamish actually. Hamish has a strong background because he went to uni and he studied finance, whereas I'm completely self-taught. So a lot of the stuff that gets a little bit into um, the academic language or the mumbo jumbo, a lot of the times Hamish kind of explains concepts to me. Um, but I think beyond him helping me out because he's a smart dude, I think one of the best things about talking to Hamish each week is that it gives you just a sounding board. It just helps you bounce ideas off of each other. Um, if we say something or if we have an idea about an investment and the other one thinks we haven't considered something, we can be like, hey, have you considered this? Which is super helpful. When we were when the flash crash was happening in 2020, when the market fell off a cliff because we just learned about COVID and everything was, the stock market was falling. Me and Hamish were talking at like 1, 2 in the morning, as the markets were open, being like, hey, have you seen this stock? It's now down another 10%. Hey, have you been watching this? What do you think? It's down another 5%. And just there's just such a value in just having someone to bounce ideas off of, and getting a reflection, particularly if like I always say to people, don't listen to the opinions of people that have never done what you're trying to do, because people generally say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. But I think if there's someone that's really on the same page as you, like we would be, for example, Renee, about investing,
Yeah.
then having someone there to be like, hey, have you considered the moat of this company? I'm not sure if it's super strong because you see their sales have kind of been sliding a little bit. Like having that with someone that thinks in a similar way to you is so valuable.
Yeah. I was actually skipping a question earlier, but now that you say that you shouldn't listen to people's advice if they haven't done whatever the advice is themselves, that brings me back to that point. So at some point you were quitting your job for your YouTube
Mm,
career, right? And I
yep.
can imagine this was a tough decision. And you probably had
Yeah.
people in your social circle who told you, well, don't do it, who are
Yep.
themselves not self-employed. Can you walk us through
Yep.
your thinking? And I guess I still remember. So just to prove that I watch your content, I think you did a video back then where you were walking around in a park, just filming yourself like in a vlog and
Yep.
sharing your feelings. And I think
Yep.
it became quite apparent that it was a big step for you.
Yeah, it was. That was at the end of 2019. About three-quarters of the way through 2019 is when I decided to take that leap. And you're right, there were some people in my social group or in my social circles that, said, "Poor, you sure you want to do this, mate? You went to, because I went to university for 4 years and I studied to be a physiotherapist. And then after all that money that I'd sunk into getting my degree, and after all that hard work and the practical examinations and the placements and, all that I'd done, and then I worked for 3 years and then I stopped. So for 4 years, I was studying the profession for longer than I was in the profession. So there were definitely people that said, "Oh, have you really thought this one through? Have you considered?" Because at the same time, at that moment, YouTube was not making as much money as what I was getting from my 9 to 5 job. So it was really, really difficult to make that decision because you did have that stuff back in the back of your mind, being like, "Oh, what if it doesn't work out?" I was pretty lucky though because I always knew that if things didn't work out on YouTube, I could go back to the profession. But ultimately, and this is maybe a lesson in just believing in yourself. There were people that were kind of saying maybe you shouldn't do it, but at the end of the day, I looked at it and said, I'm going to regret if I don't take a chance, because I was seeing the growth rate. Like the growth rate was impressive. Maybe not the income, but the growth rate of the channel was impressive. I said, if I don't take a chance on this, I'll probably think back to myself one day, man, I really regret not doing that. As I, am stuck in this full-time slog, seeing 20 patients a day and massaging people's feet. So no, I did take a chance. So it was a hard decision to make. It was quite an emotional decision for me to make at the time. I remember kind of tearing up as I told my boss that I was going to leave, but overall, I've never looked back. It was the right decision for me, and I've enjoyed every second of running my YouTube channel, just doing that as my full-time gig and trying to grow that business. It's been really, really fun.
Perfect. Yeah. As everyone can tell, you probably don't regret making that decision back then. Obviously,
No,
there's a lot of
definitely not.
benefit of hindsight here, but like, I'm happy for you. It turned out well, that decision. I have
Oh,
one
thank
final
you. When are
question.
you going to quit your job?
Oh,
When are you going to do your job full time? When are you going to do YouTube full time?
I don't know. I'm not even sure if it's a goal for me. So, um,
Yeah,
for those watching now, we had like a 10-minute chat before we hit the record button, and I was bringing up the Plain Bagel YouTube channel because what's his name? Do you know?
Richard
Richard.
Coffin.
Richard. Yeah. Richard released a video titled something like "Why I Didn't Quit YouTube Yet." And I think he has a similar
Yep.
follower base as you do, like 800,000 followers. And apparently, he gets asked that a lot. And I could relate to a lot of the points he brought up. And in a way, we discussed it on record too. That once you do it full time,
Yep.
it changes the way you can approach it, puts maybe more pressure on your shoulders. And I actually
Yep.
really like the mix I have right now. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but basically I use the YouTube channel as well to spread word about a mentorship program I offer. So basically, I have
Oh,
three
okay.
things going on. I work as a full-time teacher, which probably takes up 80% of my time during the a week. Then I do
Hmm.
videos on the side, and we have one meeting a week with a small group of people. And I really like the mix of that. So they are all
Yeah, nice.
completely different experiences. And I don't think quitting my job is something on the line in the near term. Who knows in 20 years where I'll be? So never say never. But it's not
Mm.
really a goal for me as of now. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, and I definitely think there are definitely advantages to having, as Richard said in his YouTube video, there are definitely advantages to not doing YouTube full time. And I definitely like that. I do miss that, not having to rely on the YouTube channel, because of course, once you turn it into a business, it comes with a lot of pressure because your take home pay is directly dependent on how hard you're working, how successful your YouTube channel is. And I think sometimes that does back you into a bit of a corner with your content. Like sometimes you want to make all these cool videos, but at the end of the day, you have to make the video that's going to perform better. And that sometimes that can be quite draining and quite monotonous. But yeah, so I think there are definitely pros to not having YouTube as your full-time gig.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have one final question, and I apologize that we are jumping back and forth between different
No,
topics
it's
here,
good.
but one question was asked on Instagram that I wanted to address. It was quite simple. It's focused on investing again. Uh, that person was wondering whether you ever experienced FOMO, so fear of missing out when buying a stock or not buying a stock, maybe.
Yeah, I think fear of missing out is a massive, massive thing psychologically for investors. And I think everybody experiences it to some degree. I mean, we can even look at, Nvidia and be like, if I just sunk, a couple $100 or $1,000 into Nvidia, I'd have so much money right now. So I think there's naturally going to be a fear of missing out no matter what. Um, I think I've been able to accept, just through studying people like Warren Buffett, accepting that, you are going to miss things. And he always says, why should I get the returns in Nvidia? I don't know anything about Nvidia. So why should I be able to profit off of that? I've got no idea. But, I think if he missed, say, an insurance company that went to the moon, I think then that would get to him. Then he'd really feel it, be like, oh. So I think, yeah, definitely you can't help it. Fear of missing out is definitely there. But I think a lot of the times you got to take a long, hard look at these companies and that skyrocket and be like, well, do I actually know anything about that company? If what if it was the opposite? What if this company, like Nvidia, was going up and up and up. And then all of a sudden I bought in and then it crashed by 90%. Well, then, by avoiding it completely, I would have avoided that horrific situation. Now, of course, that didn't eventuate, but you can look, like, instead of just looking at fear of missing out and looking at the companies that skyrocket to the moon, go and have a look at a company that was doing well and is now doing terribly. You'd be like, well, thank goodness I avoided that.
Exactly, yeah. We have a tendency to
Yeah.
only look at the things we miss, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We miss out on the positives. So it is very, very hard. And I don't know if I have a good kind of a good method of combating it. But I think that the longer that you kind of invest for, and maybe the more you study people like Warren Buffett, the more you realize that you don't need to get every single stock. Like you don't need to get the Tesla and then switch and get the GameStop and then switch and get the Nvidia. As Warren Buffett says, you can still be extremely wealthy by just finding two or three great companies in your whole life. And just when those opportunities arise that are in your circle of competence, and you think, actually, I do know about this and I do think it's a good opportunity, then you jump on those. And that's all you need, really. And I think understanding that, like really understanding that you only need those few companies, really helps maybe soften the blow of not getting on the GameStop or the Nvidia or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's impossible to do anyway. So unless you would have some kind of superpower that would enable you to always time the top and the bottom, it's impossible to
Yeah.
do. Because if you think about it, let's say you sell a stock, chances are, unless you really timed the top, it will continue to go up. And the same is true when
Yeah.
you buy a stock. Unless you really bottom tick that purchase, that stock will go down more. And just being aware of
Yeah.
this, that it's impossible to time tops and bottoms, and that investing in itself as a discipline is a discipline of regret. Because you will always
Mm.
regret not having done something differently with the benefit of
Yeah.
hindsight. Just being aware of that probably makes things easier for you.
Yeah, definitely. But gosh, man, imagine if we got on Nvidia. Nah, you're exactly right.
All right, Bren, let me wrap it up by saying you brought up earlier that you were interviewing Guy Spear not too long ago. And I guess you back then viewed that as a privilege, getting the opportunity to interview him. So I wanted to thank you to take the time to do this interview with you. I'm obviously a much smaller creator, but I'm sure people watching the video will find it quite enjoyable, and hopefully they can take one or two lessons away from it too. And yeah, let's
Yeah.
just stay in touch, I guess.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got to say, thanks for having me on the channel. I like what you do. I think you go about it. Obviously, we go about it in very similar ways, and it's great that we're kind of spreading the word of rational long-term investing. So I think we need a lot more of that stuff. And I think, yeah, your channel is fantastic at doing that. So no, I really appreciate you hosting me on the channel. And yeah, I hope people got one or two things out of the podcast. And thanks for having me on. It was a good chat.